Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinators Pit Stop. We have with us today Benny Voncken, who is a digital nomad and Stoic life coach who left his job in Dubai to house and pet sit around the world, sharing his journey towards sobriety and purpose through weekly writing and speaking engagements. Guided by Stoic principles, which are rooted in gratitude, love, and introspection, he inspires others to find peace in a modern world that needs this philosophy now more than ever. Benny, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And thanks for the intro. It kind of, encompasses it all.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show, and we have a lot of ground to cover. I'm sure that a lot of interesting points we could get into. Before we do, though, we do like to have an icebreaker on this show, and the question for you today is, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most, and why?
That's an interesting question. And I'm not sure if it's actually cartoon, but a Muppet, from the Fraggle Rock. I was like to
Okay.
identify to traveling Uncle Matt from, I don't know if you know that he was like, he would travel and explore the human world and send postcards back to the Fraggle Rock. I always kind of identify to him. Not sure the connection with Stoicism. Sure, there is something to be found, but more the traveling aspect of my life really is seen there. So, and that's always some picture of something that I have in mind when I think about, who inspired me, as a kid from back in those days.
Oh, no, it's funny you bring up Fraggle Rock. I don't think I've thought about it or seen an episode of that in, wow, probably going on 30 years. But yeah, dating myself there. Wow. But if memory serves, Fraggle Rock was very in tune with different aspects related to environmentalism. And also, I think there was sharing and there was some other things peppered in there too. So it might be interesting to just go back and actually rewatch that and just see what I can glean now that I've got, a different lens on everything. Anyway, let's slide into it now. The first question that I have for you, and it's an interesting one for me, is what is procrastination for you through the lens of Stoicism, and what does it mean to you personally?
I used to be a procrastinator, and maybe not in the sense like to postponing my tasks, although I was very good at that as well. I had a kind of a model like at the final moment, that's where the talent is. I need that kind of deadline to have that push. But I think it's also a matter of like waiting for things to happen to me. I was always in that state of like, oh, if this happens, then I'm gonna be fine. If this happens, then I can finally do this. And that's where that Stoic philosophy really helped me change that mindset to say, no, if I want to do things, then I've got to step up. Then I've got to actually make them happen. If I want to have my life go in a certain direction, which, as you kind of told in the bio, like left my job in Dubai, I've made a lot of decisions towards the kind of life that I wanted to lead. So I really got away from that procrastinating aspect in my life in general, because I was waiting for things to happen to make it really all just kind of fit together. And that's where I made that change. I quit my job. I said, okay, I want to do these things. I want to go travel. It's not going to be easy, but that's fine. But if I want to do this, we only have one life. And if we want to make it the way we want to live it, then we've got to make those choices. And that's what really matters. And that's where Stoicism comes into play as well, because we've got to make sure that we are living our life the best way we can. And that can help the people around us by setting a good example and by learning much more about ourselves as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's a very, very good perspective for sure. Don't wait for things to happen. I think it segues pretty well into my next question here, which would be beneficial for our audience and those that don't know what Stoicism is. Could you kind of give a very brief rundown of what it actually is and what it isn't? Because there are a lot of misconceptions, right?
Yeah, so the best way to kind of really capture what and to explain a little bit better is it's more of a Western pragmatic version of Buddhism. So it is very in tune with living in the present, living now, being in touch with who you are, instead of that negative image that people have of shutting off your emotions, being this brick wall, a stiff upper lip. That's what they call lowercase s Stoicism. And an uppercase S is where you really do the work. Like the interesting thing is on the outside, it might look the same, those two. But as long as you've done the inner work, as long as you've asked yourself the real questions of who am I? Why are these things triggering me? Why does this upset me? What do I control? What don't I control? Once you really start to work on those things, you get to find this inner peace and calm that helps you just go through life a little bit more fluid and peaceful. And so when we look at what the real intention of Stoicism is, it's to live a life according to virtue, which can be broken up into wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, and to live in accordance with your nature. to really, again, find out who you are. They were big fans of Socrates. They pretty much had him high on a pedestal, and Socrates said, know yourself, right? A life, unexamined life is not worth living. And they really took that and expanded that with the rest of the philosophy to say, okay, you want to find out who you are, live in accordance with who you are, but also with how the bigger nature around you is, and then capture that together, and you will reach a state of eudaimonia, which is said a state of a good spirit state, where you can be, that happiness, being content. That's really what they're after. So if you really look at the real Stoic philosophy, it's all about examining who you are, what your place is in life, your duty that you have to play, that you innately feel. So your skills, your strengths, and how society can benefit of the best version of you.
Okay, so it really is more of it's knowing yourself, but it's more of like it's more selfless based. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's what they say in the airplanes. Put your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. And because if you're not the best version of yourself, if you're unstable, if you're not really using your reason and logic, what they are really big on, but if you are acting from your emotions, so if you get angry and you use the anger to act, you might punch a hole in the wall, and after you calm down, you say, this might not have been the best reaction. But if you've taken that pause, once you get angry, you take a pause, you say, okay, what would be the best action for me to take? Society is going to benefit from that. Instead of you as an angry person running around amok, that might do far more damage. But if you learn how to, and this doesn't mean to quench those emotions, it means to give them a pause, to reflect on them. And the more you do that, the more you start to identify what they mean to you and why something is triggering you, why something really affects you in a certain way. And then you can still give yourself that moment to make the right action. And I think it was Viktor Frankl who said in his great book of Man's Search for Meaning, he said, between stimuli and response, we have a little space for ourselves. And that's where we find our spirit and soul. And that's that pause that we are talking about. And we actually, at Via Stoica, we call the newsletter the pause, because we think it's that important to really hone into that moment. And that's something you practice. It's not something that you just do, but you start to practice and you start to identify, okay, where do I need to take a break? Where do I need to take a moment? So that's really... And then in that moment, you apply reason and logic. What's really going on here? Why am I getting angry? Why did these words that someone say affect me so much? Because at the end of the day, they're just words. But as soon as they go through our filter, we add some kind of label to it that says like, oh, now I'm hurt. Why? Because this person said something to me and I chose to feel hurt by them.
So why don't we go into a little bit of your background? Such an interesting story. I mean, you left your job to go house sitting and pet sitting. You certainly don't hear that every day. How did you get to do that and be where you are today?
Yeah, so I've lived abroad for almost 15 years. I'm from the Netherlands. I've lived in Spain. I'm currently in Spain as well. But I've lived in Spain for like 7 years to teach English. Then I moved to Dubai to again work in education. But during that process, I went through a divorce. I was dealing with alcoholism. I was dealing with physical injury. And that's where I found philosophy, my philosophy of life, Stoicism. And again, we always say, I'm not here to turn people into Stoics, but I would like to inspire people to find their own philosophy of life, to ask those questions, to look for what they want to get out of life. And as your channel and your podcast is great, is like, don't procrastinate, do it now, because we only have this very moment. If you want to make changes, then this is the moment that we've got to do it. And that's what the Stoics say as well. We only have this moment. The past and the future, they're out of our control. So at one point I was, going through those stages, finding my way, and I felt like, okay, I do like education, and there's also kind of a coaching aspect in it. I want to work with people. I want to help people. And during COVID, I did some coaching courses, and I started doing more of the Stoicism for myself. At one point, I started writing my blog, and I felt there was something more. Just kind of, I don't know if you've ever felt that, like that inner voice that said like, oh, I've got to do this. And I've laid out a plan for myself. And after having saved up enough money in Dubai, I figured, okay, I've got 2 years. Let's go, quit my job, visit some friends. And how can I make this travel a little bit cheaper, a little bit more on the budget wise, and still get to spend time in some really great places? And someone told me about the house sitting and the pet sitting, and that was just perfect. I love animals. I'm a responsible person, so I can take care of the houses and everything. And that was such a great found. I started out in Palo Alto, then went to Mexico, went to Costa Rica, did all of South America, and I've met some really great people, some really great pets. And the good thing for me is as well, I can be kind of a hermit, but because I'm looking after, for example, dogs, you have to go walk them. And then you get to meet people because you go and walk kind of the same routes and you see people who do the same. So you get to kind of talk to them. So for me, that was the perfect combination to travel while also building a company, while also building my own future the way that I foresee it. So that mix was perfect for me.
No, it's definitely interesting. I haven't, I hadn't really even considered that, but there's always couch surfing, but house sitting is interesting. Did you use a website for that, or did you just use like classified ads?
Now, there's a website called Trusted House Sitters. You have to make a profile. They ask for some payment because they also provide, like with Airbnb, some insurances and also some, because you're looking after people's homes, so you want to have some trust there. So you build up your profile with reviews, and that now, like at the beginning, it's quite difficult to get your first sits. But once you get some reviews and some positive ones, then it becomes a little bit easier. So yeah, no, it was perfect for me. I got this, it's long periods of time in some beautiful homes where I could find my own peace and quiet and explore the surroundings.
Oh, it's definitely good. And I think I might actually check that out for myself. Just if I'm bored sometime, just figure that out. Your journey, you had quite a few challenges. What do you think was the biggest challenge you had to overcome?
Well, the one that I found was longest was dealing with alcohol, but that was something that was stretching from like when I was younger till the last couple of years. I've been sober for 4.5 years now, which wasn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like a choice. It's just something that you have to do. And Stoicism helped me to overcome the opinions of others. And when I say like it wasn't really a choice, it just felt like something that was me, right? Whether I was gonna do it, eventually I would have done it. Like I don't think my relationship with alcohol was as bad. I didn't drink by myself alone. I would just go out as a social drinker, and I would always wake up, feeling depressed and hungover and getting nervous before parties. So for me, the biggest threshold was what people would think of me if I wasn't drinking anymore. And after I really dealt with that, I had some great examples from my sister and my cousin who also quit. I could say, okay, this is possible. I can do this. And again, it's about that choice of how do I want to make my life. And at one point, after I got through the divorce, and that was also a big one in my life. But after I was dealing with that one, and I woke up one day, hungover, looking in the mirror, it's like, this is not the way I want to live my life. This is not the way I want to see. So that's when I made some rules for myself, to quit alcohol, to go to the gym, eat well, take care of myself, at least physically. That gives me the space to work on myself mentally and internally as well. And that really helped me along. It wasn't easy, but as I see how I progressed, I felt like, wow, I've made some really good steps to deal with this in the best way possible, and to find a better relationship with myself and create that new future that, when you go through a divorce, you see your future kind of crumble. And that's what I really had to rebuild and create my own path again.
Thank you for sharing that. And, congratulations on 4 years. That's quite an accomplishment. What do you think was your greatest sort of success? Like when you really felt that, yes, I'm on the right path with this new devotion. When did you really know?
There were several steps. One of the facts was that I was able to take more responsibility for my own life, kind of get out of that victim mentality. It's like, oh, why is this happening to me? And as I was reading more of the Stoics, there's some really great consolation letters by Seneca. He writes one to a lady called Marcia, but also one to his mom. And it's really, okay, these things happen. They don't happen to you personally. They happen because that's life. But if you take them personally, then you can start to see yourself as a victim instead of someone who is a human being, with reason and logic to be able to deal with most of the things. I think that that's sometimes something that we forget, that we are far more capable of dealing with the things that come our way. When we are in the moment, we are usually not as anxious because we have to deal with them. But when we think about them in the future, we might get more anxious or worried. So that was one of the biggest steps where I kind of took that victim mentality away from me and said, again, I want to live my life a certain way. So then I've got to do it. I've got to take on that responsibility. And if I want to live this free life that I want to live, it's not easy because suddenly everything falls on your shoulder. You have to make all the decisions. If you have a job, at least you know what you're going to be doing between, Monday and Friday. You're going to go to an office. You're going to have certain tasks to do. You're going to have things that But if you start to build your own company and you start to build your own life, then all of those decisions fall on your shoulders, which I like because it gives me that freedom. So that was one of the things that really helped me to take away that victim mentality, to assume responsibility for my life, but also the fact that I was letting go of other people's opinions on me. I was always very influenced by how people thought about me, very, very kind of sensitive towards criticism. One of the reasons why I started my blog, because I figured where best to go and find criticism than go online and share your opinions and your thoughts. So I was putting them out there on certain like blogs and even like the Stoic Facebook groups, for example. And I was surprised with how harsh people were, even among Stoic groups. But for me, it was perfect to deal with that part of myself. So that again, to find the opinions and to leave them where they are helped me with so many things. As I said, with alcoholism, but also with other things, to really make the decisions that are best for me, but also that help other people around me.
It's definitely interesting how things sort of fall into place like that when you actually use critical, thinking, reflection, and introspection. Speaking of introspection, what do you think was the most surprising thing that you learned about yourself that maybe you didn't know before?
From all of this journey, I think one of the most surprising things is that I think this falls for everyone, but I just didn't realize it, is that we have the capability of learning everything that we want to learn. Like I've built throughout this journey, I've had to learn how to be a speaker. Like I was kind of a shy person. So I went on X, now Twitter. I did some Twitter spaces, some live conversations there. And I had some good friends or some people that I've met, and they really kind of mentored me that way. And I started to build myself out to share my own opinions, my own views. So those things were really kind of surprising of like, okay, I can learn this. I built the website, I built everything myself. Everything that I'm doing is just by myself. So that's really gave me a lot of strength to keep doing what I want to do. And one of the things that really gave me the momentum there is when I see an obstacle, and at the beginning I would be overwhelmed. Say, oh, I need to build a website. This is too big for me to handle. And now I just break it down with one step. Okay, what's the first thing that I've got to do? I don't know how to do it. Okay, I've got the internet. It can teach me. So that's one of the real things that has helped me to create that independence as well. I can learn things if I have to, but I can also hire the people. If I see a task that I could do, but not as well as anyone else, then I could hire someone else to do it. So those kind of things help me along the way to see I can, do more than I thought I was capable of.
Well, I mean, you're certainly right about that. We a lot of times we're surprised because we tend to underestimate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to practice Stoicism, that encourages you to look at it objectively, almost as an outside observer. Is that correct?
Yeah, you want to create that kind of cognitive distancing. Sorry, you want to create that distance between the event that's happening, and that's one of the key things within Stoicism. We all live with impressions coming our way. So everything that's kind of external that happens to us, that's an impression that happens to us. And we place our opinions and our judgments on those. So we have to make sure that we are interpreting those impressions the right way. We want to make sure that they are true or false. And the Stoics, they have kind of 4 qualifications. You have one thing, you can see something and it's there. You can't see something and it's not there. Those are the true impressions that we have. Then you have another one, we see something, but it's not there. So for example, if I meet with a friend and I think that they are upset with me while they are not upset with me, that's my projection, my thoughts, putting that on the situation. And then you have the other one where there's nothing there, but I can't see it, but there is something there. So I can see, oh, they're not upset with me while they're actually angry. So I'm just misinterpreting the situation, which doesn't allow me to use the right course of action to take. So that is a real big part of us that we should start to do more, objectively look at the situation, what's happening, to kind of remove that impulse connection between our emotions and feelings and our actions, and really focus on what's in the middle, how we interpret the situation and what then the best course of action is. And that's where we would need, for example, courage. If we see that the best course of action doesn't fall in line with our wants and desires, like I want this, but the right thing to do would be this. For example, I was traveling with a camper van and I forgot to put the handbrake on and it bumped into a car behind us. And one of the things I could have done was to drive away, right? But that would not have been the right thing to do. So we reached out to the police, they tracked down the owner, and we took the insurances, they took care of everything. So that also changed a bad situation into a good one because it gave me the opportunity to be the best version of myself. It allowed me to, instead of do something that is not good, allow me, okay, now I can see if I'm a good person or not. So I can actually do the right thing. So that's kind of one of those ways how we can look at things objectively instead of placing a label of good or bad on it, just looking at what is the right thing to do.
Oh, that's certainly an interesting question in today's world, isn't it? What is the right thing to do? Because you've got ethically right, and then you've got morally right, and one of those is more external, and the other one is more internal. So, which compass do you tend to listen to then?
The internal one. I think that that's the one that we can, again, the Stoics, they have a clear divide of what's under control and what isn't. If we read like the Epictetus, he's one of the 3 Roman Stoics that still have some writing remaining. Most of the writing comes from Seneca, but Epictetus, one of his students, took notes, and he has like discourses and a handbook, but he makes a clear divide. He says, what's under your control are your opinions, your thoughts, everything, your actions, everything that comes from you. And everything in the outside, even your body, isn't under your control. You can try to be as healthy as possible. You can stay fit, but you can still fall ill or get injured. But at the end of the day, that's not under your control. The same thing with the outward things, or the externals. So if we really want to ask ourselves, what do I want to do that is right? We have to work from our inner voice. And I like, choosing the word compass, because that's something that is difficult to find. Like, when do I do something is right? And then we go back to the outcome that Stoics want to achieve, is that inner peace. So when you have to make a choice, you can feel like, if I do this, then maybe it gives me happiness or joy or pleasure, but does it give me peace? If I do this, my conscience is going to be great or good because I've done the right thing. And then I find that inner peace. Instead of having that instant gratification of joy, I choose for the long-term effect of doing the right thing. And that's where you can use that inner compass for.
It's interesting, and I wonder then, what would you say is the most challenging part of becoming, a Stoic?
It is quite demanding, right? And the Stoics, to have the sage, the perfect person as their example, the personification of that would be Socrates. But they said, this is the person who knows everything, sits at the table with the gods, if you will. And that's how they kind of explained it. Just having that perfect example shows you how many, mistakes or imperfections I have. So every time I make an action, it's like, oh, I should have done this better. Oh, why not? So you always have that constant evaluation and reflection with yourself, where you feel that you could have done better. And that's where the Stoics change that around. And they say, but focus on your progress, right? Focus on becoming better. Yes, you can make mistakes, right? You can make, slip up on the things that you do, but make sure that you're making progress. Make sure that you are evaluating, for example, if people like to journal, or just think about it, talk to people about it. But as long as you are working towards that goal, you are still doing fine. But that is one of the trickiest parts that you have, because if you read the Stoic text, they are very strict with, what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do. And they have their ideas about these things. But if you then add the human filter on it, you can say, okay, I'm not perfect, and I'm probably not going to get there, but let me just try to get as close as I can.
No, I like that, having everything through like that filter, that we are all human. And that actually leads me to another question. I've fallen into this same sort of trap myself when, you get into analysis paralysis, right? You're evaluating. I mean, it's kind of being Stoic, but it's not really, because you're deciding, okay, wait, I'm taking a pause to decide what I'm doing. But then you get stuck in that sort of evaluation mode. How do you account for that in Stoicism?
That's why one of the virtues is moderation or temperance. So you want to, and one of the techniques that they use is negative visualization, that kind of looking into what might happen, preparing yourself for eventualities. For example, I'm one of the person that if I go out, I look for the exits. And I say, okay, if something happens, I know where to go here and there. And they look at that as like the situations that might happen. So, for example, if you go to a job interview, you ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? I not get the job, or maybe the worst thing is getting the job. But you don't know that yet at that moment, because you can't really foresee the future. I've had, I don't know, maybe some of the listeners had, or maybe you yourself, like I've had where I went to a job interview, I didn't get it, and I felt like, oh, this is the worst thing that could happen. And then a week later, I found a far better job. I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't get that one. So adding that label to it preemptively, it can be a tricky thing, right? So they have that negative visualization where they say, oh, prepare yourself mentally for what might happen. And then you can see that you've got a lot more tools in your tool belt to deal with that actually. But there's also that moderation. Okay, you've done that right now. Now go back to the present moment. If you've kind of ruminated a little bit, and I tend to use, kind of a mantra, if you will, like whenever I'm ruminating or thinking about overthinking, that used to be something that I was very good at. I ask myself, what can I do about it right now? So I've thought about it, I've kind of prepared myself mentally, and then I go back to the present. Okay, what is the action that I should be taking right now? If there isn't an action about that specific item or problem, then I say, okay, what do I need to do right now? Is it lunchtime? Then let me just eat. Is it at night? Then let me sleep. So we really focus at bringing it back to the present and looking at the action that I've got to take. So there has got to be a stop to that ruminating. Otherwise, you just fall back into the feedback loop of overthinking and not really stopping. But you can do that, but within certain boundaries. So that's you can just tell yourself, okay, for the next 10 minutes, let me just think about this, or let me just journal about this. Let me talk to someone about this problem, and afterwards, I'm going to focus on what I've got to do about it, or just in general, what I've got to do right now.
And for anybody who's looking at, perhaps doing some research or starting to practice, because it can seem a little bit confusing and overwhelming. And you mentioned yourself, there's some strictness involved. What would you say is the best sort of first step?
Yeah, there's different ones. I think that's also something that I want to, everybody needs to find out kind of for themselves what works best, right? I'm one who can read, I can pick up a book and I just go delve into it deep and just really reflect on how this works for me. So reading on it with that lens. So for example, on our website, viewstoica.com, we put on a reading list for Stoic for beginners. So you can follow a certain list of books. That's something that I put together after having read everything and applied. And it's like, what would have been the best way to kind of start reading these books and work them together, like ancient text together with more contemporary text. But there's also, the podcast, or like we offer Stoic coaching, where we help people, the coaches look at you through a Stoic lens, but also give you the tips and the tricks to really apply this. For example, if you have a certain situation, try this negative visualization, or try the pause, or try these things. So that's one of the ways to start looking at it. But if you really want to read things, and I would definitely go to the ancient text for me. And that's just something as a history kind of enthusiast. Like Marcus Aurelius, The Meditations is just a wonderful book where you can get and Stoicism, but also you see life through the eyes of a Roman emperor, because this was his personal diary, never meant for publication. So you can see kind of what he was going through as he was ruling the greatest empire at the world at that time, fighting battles in Germania and Northern Europe. So for me, that's just really interesting to read from different levels, Seneca and Epictetus. And that's probably one of the better ways to start, but also to start applying it. Start kind of breaking it down, evaluate yourself, like what are the parts of life that I'm dealing with and I'm struggling with, and then see how could I apply certain techniques to those specific items in my.
And you mentioned a couple of tools there, negative visualizations, and, I'm guessing the Socratic method's in there somewhere. What's your personal favorite tool in the Stoic toolbox, so to speak?
One of them is and they're combined with, they have phrases like Memento Mori, remember that you will die, Amor Fati, love your fate. And for me, they kind of combine in a sense of gratitude. So Memento Mori is remember that you will die, and Epictetus at one point he says like when you lay your child to bed, softly whisper, tomorrow you will die, to your child. And one of the reasons that is, it sounds morbid, but it also shows like what this person is. It's a mortal being. It could die tomorrow. So our time with each other is limited. So if you have your loved ones with you, if you have the people around you that you want to spend time, or just with yourself, be grateful that you get to spend those moments. We tend to be so distracted nowadays. If I meet with people and they're on the phone, you're not giving me attention. And I read something really great in the Socrates Express by Eric Weiner. He was talking about a philosopher called Simone Weil, and she said, attention is love. And that's something that I've really learned about this philosophy, where if you pay attention to the people that you're with, then it doesn't really matter how long or short time you have with them. You've had that moment together in a great, deep, profound way, and that will help you be more grateful for even when they're gone, right? When they're gone, you still say, okay, but at least the time that I've had with them, I've used it to the fullest. At least that's what I can say, because a lot of people have these fleeting connections, and then they say, oh, I wish I had more time with them. And the Stoics say, we don't know how much time we have, and all the time that's gone, we can't get it back. While we are spending our time chasing money, chasing status, chasing possessions, and they don't really matter at the end of the day. It's our life, the connections that we have. So using that, and as a traveler, really helped me too, because you have more fleeting connections. You meet people here, they move, you move. But I've really learned to place gratitude in the moment itself when I'm with them. And I can say, okay, I'm here with you now. I'm giving you my full attention. Let's talk. Let's do something. Let's go out on an activity or an adventure. And then when they leave, it's like, wow, I've had a great time. But now it's time to kind of separate and we go each other's way. Maybe we'll meet up again or stay in touch. But at least we've had that moment and we didn't waste that moment itself.
No, that's a good way to look at it. We don't know how much time we have and that attention. And we have it all the time. You'll be sitting with your parents or sitting with your kids. Heaven knows I've been guilty of this in the past. I tend not to do it anymore, throw the phone into a box or something. But, if you're not giving your full attention, then, you're kind of robbing them of your energy and your presence. Is that the idea, right?
Yeah, and being with people without giving them your attention is kind of like an insult. It kind of makes it worse. I'm with you, but I'm not really with you, right? But if you give some of your attention, and I think one of the skills that we find more difficult right now is listening. And I think that's why I like coaching so much, because I like to listen to people. I'm a naturally curious person, so I love to hear more about other people's stories. That for me, these things going on podcasts and talking about my stories is sometimes a little bit difficult, because I'm not a very person who talks about. That's one of my lessons, right? It's one of my lessons of my journey, to be more expressive about my experiences, share them. But I love to listen and I love to ask questions and I love to kind of look at it through a different lens. But that's the attention that you give to someone. And that's I've noticed that during my experience in education with students, even the difficult students, I give them my attention. It's like, hey, what's wrong? Why are you struggling with this? Can you explain it? You can see them changing their attitude because you are paying attention to them. You're giving them something that they might not get everywhere else, maybe from their friends or even maybe from parents who are too busy to build the life that they love, while they miss the time that they can spend or the attention that they should be giving to the children, right? And I think that that's something that we can really do better. And one of the ways to do that is by listening more attentively and actively. I say, okay, what did this person say? Instead of waiting for my turn to start to speak again.
You said a lot of powerful stuff there that can really hit home for a lot of people. We pay attention to the things that we think we're doing right to, build those lives that we think we want, even for our families. What's the saying? It's the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
So, you think you're doing the right thing, but you're really just, you're really not. The other point you hit on there is I think it's a really important one, is just to be curious, right? Because we live in a society where I just wrote a post on this recently too about boredom, and we tend to tune out when we're bored. Well, and I want to hear your view on this. In my view, we're bored because our brain is constantly looking for new stimulus. So when we get bored, we try to tune to the easiest thing to give us that stimulus, but it's uninteresting to us and unimportant to us because we've given it a label and we think we know everything there is to know about it. Therefore, it gets shoved to the back. Oh, we don't need to know anything. Therefore, we're not curious. What's your take on that?
That's an interesting one. And I think boredom is definitely one of the kind of maybe the epidemics that we have. And it's kind of, we've been fed to want to chase the next shiny object. That's why we have all the social media. If you happen to click on TikTok, it's just like, okay, next, and you kind of get locked in there. But then not asking yourself what's behind it, not asking yourself what's really going on here and why do I like this? Why is this appealing to me? And how much do I know about it? How much do I still have to learn? And then you have that maybe that Dunner-Cunning effect where you start out with very high levels of confidence because I've learned something about this. And then the more you learn, the more you drop in confidence because you realize I don't know anything about it. But if you then keep persisting and if you keep doing more and more about it, you'll see, hey, I can still, again, what I said at the beginning, I can still learn this. I can still apply this. And this is what kind of happened to my Stoic journey as well, where you get humbled at the beginning. You start to write, oh, look at how smart I am. And then you see other people who know more about it. And it's, wait a minute, let me just take a step back because I might not know as much as I think. And then you start to learn more and you say, wait, I can understand this. I can get it. But more importantly, I can apply it to my life. I can really make a change. And I just recently kind of noticed like a few months ago that my anxiety levels and worries have dropped considerably. Like they've really went kind of they're still there. I'm still working on that, but they've dropped so fast. I didn't even notice. Like, wow, I'm so much more calm. But again, when we get that bored situation, we start to look for things that instantly give us a reaction. It's like, oh, look, I'm happy again. I'm feeling something again. And that's something that I think is that tricky part where we always keep finding happiness, right? I want to be happy, because if I'm not happy, then I'm not living well. But I always tell myself, let's try to be content. As long as if I'm content, that's already difficult enough. But if I can find that baseline of contentness, then I can go back to it. If I'm sad or happy, then at least when I go back, it's like, I'm good here. This is fine. And that's also good. And from that kind of foundation, you can allow yourself a little bit of peace and calm to investigate things, to take that little, to put the handbrake on a little bit of the speedy life that we're living, and say, okay, let me just take a step back, and I want to learn this so I can do this, and just give myself the time to do so instead of getting distracted by the next new thing.
No, I like that, taking a step back. I mean, the old cliche, stop to smell the roses.
Mm-hmm.
But Benny, this has been a great conversation. We are heading up pretty close to the time. Was there anything that you feel I should have asked but didn't ask, or anything that we didn't cover that you feel we should have covered today?
I think we had a good, stimulating conversation. Hopefully, the listeners got something out of it. I did. I always like it when people ask different questions, and that certainly happened here. And at the end of the day, I think it's important for people to start looking for their own philosophy of life, to start asking themselves that questions. What kind of life do I want to live? What are my values and priorities? And where do I want to spend my time on? All these big questions we should start to ask a little bit more. I think that boredom will go away, because we can see that we can be far more entertained by the right things that are right here in front of us at the moment, instead of chasing those things that are, that always wanting more, that desiring. That's always that ever moving goalpost, because once you have it, you want something more. But if we really focus on, like, what is important to me, what kind of life do I want to live, and build your own philosophy about that. You can use Stoicism, Buddhism, whatever kind of philosophy that kind of speaks to you. Use it and try to really understand what it means, and build your life around that. And again, you shouldn't wait for tomorrow to do it. You should start doing it now. Even Marcus Aurelius says that. It's like, you choose to be a better man, but you choose tomorrow. And he tells that himself, but you can start right now.
What a powerful note to end on. Benny, just before we go, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out if they have a question, or maybe they want to learn more, or get involved?
Yeah, people can find me on any social media, from Instagram to LinkedIn to X, Twitter. Just under LinkedIn, it's Benny Voncken. Under the other ones, it's Benny_Via Stoica. Or you can go to viastoica.com and book a 30-minute free consultation and speak to either me, Brendan, or Bryce, the people that I work with. And we're all coaches, and you can just book a free consultation and speak to us about something that you want. And we also have the newsletter, the podcast, and the blog on the website. So people want to kind of find a way to start with something, they can always join there. And it's all called Via Stoica, so it's kind of easy to go and find us.
Okay, and as usual, just to my listeners right now, to our listeners, don't worry about grabbing a pen and paper and trying to write all that down. We are going to have it in the show notes for you, so it'll be really easy for you to find. Once again, Benny, thank you so much for being on the show. Some really great insights. Really enjoyed the conversation. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And, just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation and inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.